Hey everyone, I'm Scripted Fear, your storyteller for tonight. Thanks for stopping by. I know a lot of you listen to these videos to unwind or fall asleep. So before you get too cozy, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoy these stories. And let me know in the comments, where are you listening from and what time is it for you? Alright, get comfortable, relax, and let's begin. I hadn't planned on staying long. Just enough time to gather a few of Marcus's things for his sister, maybe straighten up the place. But the moment I stepped into that house, I knew something was wrong. The air felt heavy, stale in a way that spoke of more than just neglect. Dust gathered in corners, the faint smell of old wood, and something metallic lingering in every room. But it was the living room rug that really caught my attention. Burned areas patterned the fabric, rough, slightly raised, as if something incredibly hot had pressed against it for an extended period. But this wasn't random damage. The marks were precise, deliberate, circular, spiraling inward toward the center of the room before stopping abruptly, as though whatever caused them had simply disappeared. I crouched down, running my fingers along the edges of the burns. They were cold to the touch, yet the way the threads curled and blackened suggested intense heat. But when I'd visited Marcus just 2 weeks before his accident, and the rug had been fine then. The insurance investigator had found no signs of fire, no electrical malfunction. Officially, Marcus's death was the result of mechanical failure. His car had veered off a rural highway at 3 in the morning, crashing into a ravine. No witnesses, no explanation for what he was even doing out there. A soft thud from downstairs snapped me out of my thoughts. I froze, listening. It came again, rhythmic, deliberate, like footsteps moving through the lower level. But I'd locked the front door behind me. Marcus's house sat on an isolated 2-acre lot with no immediate neighbors. The footsteps continued, slow and measured, ascending the stairs. My mind scrambled for rational explanations. Old house, pipes, wind rattling fixtures. But the sounds were too purposeful. Floorboards creaked under real weight. Fabric brushed against walls. Someone, or something, was climbing toward the second floor. The footsteps stopped outside Marcus's bedroom door. I held my breath, eyes fixed on the narrow gap where the door stood ajar. The silence that followed pressed in like smoke, thick, choking, absolute. Even the typical noises of an old house had vanished. No settling wood, no faint hum of electricity, no wind against window panes. Then I heard breathing. Not my own panic gasp, something else. Slow, deliberate inhalations and exhalations just beyond the door. The rhythm was wrong. Too controlled, like whoever or whatever was breathing was doing so with conscious effort, not natural reflex. I edged toward the window, keeping my eyes locked on the door. The breathing continued, steady as a metronome. A faint glow pulsed in the darkness beyond the gap, though I couldn't see the source. The metallic smell in the room thickened, joined now by a sour, organic stench, wet earth, decaying leaves. The combination coated the back of my throat with a sickening, cloying taste, and I realized I wasn't alone. I couldn't see it, not directly, but the air near the foot of the bed felt denser, heavier, as though space itself compressed in that spot. Shadows shifted in my peripheral vision, angles bending unnaturally. When I turned my head, everything looked normal, but the wrongness remained. The breathing stopped. In its place came a faint scraping, like fingernails dragging across rough surfaces. The sound came from multiple points around the room at once, impossible to pinpoint. I fumbled for my phone, craving the comfort of its glowing screen. It felt strange, warmer than it should have been, the surface sticky despite being clean earlier. The screen flickered to life, and my stomach twisted. 3:17 a.m. That couldn't be right. I'd arrived at 7 p.m. Even with everything, only 2 hours, maybe 3, had passed. But the phone insisted 8 hours gone, placing me squarely in the dead of night. The scraping intensified, whispers now rising beneath it. Urgent, insistent, though the words remained just out of reach. The voices seemed to bleed from the burned spirals on the rug, curling upward like smoke. I pressed my back against the window, cold glass grounding me. But outside, the world had changed. The backyard familiar during the day had become a frozen tableau. Trees stood unnaturally still, their branches locked mid-sway as if arrested by time. The grass looked brittle, colorless, drained of life. Worse, there was no light. No glow from distant houses, no street lamps, no stars, no moon. Just oppressive, infinite blackness. Inside, the presence solidified. I could almost see its shape now tall, thin, its angles wrong. They didn't align in any way that made sense. It moved with unnatural grace, tracing the spiral burned into the rug. Each step deliberate, following the path precisely. My chest tightened, lungs struggling to pull in the thick, metallic-tinged air. Spots danced at the edges of my vision, dizziness threatening to overtake me. The entity completed another circuit, pausing in front of me. Though I still couldn't see it clearly, I felt its attention, a crushing, skin-crawling awareness. It was studying me, evaluating, deciding. A memory surfaced Marcus's last conversation. "I've been having weird dreams," he'd admitted, laughing nervously. "I keep hearing footsteps at night, like something's walking the halls, leaving traces, but they're gone by morning." He paused then, eyes darting toward the staircase. "I think it's been here a while, waiting for something or someone." I'd brushed it off as anxiety, isolation playing tricks on him. But now, pinned under that inhuman scrutiny, I understood. Marcus had tried to warn me. The entity resumed its movement, completing its final spiral toward the rug's center. The burned markings pulsed with dim, reddish light, faint but undeniable. The air buzzed, humming with low, bone-deep vibrations. The temperature plummeted, my breath visible in short, ragged puffs. The scraping reached a crescendo, whispers rising to an urgent hiss. My skin prickled as unseen pressure filled the room. And then it stopped. Everything, the sounds, the presence, the wrongness gone in an instant. I staggered, chest heaving. The room looked normal again, or as normal as the bedroom of a dead man could look. The rug still bore the burned spirals. The dresser still blocked the door. My phone, trembling in my hand, now displayed the correct time. 9:23 p.m. Only 2 hours had passed. I didn't try to move the dresser. I didn't search the house. I left, keys shaking in my grip, never looking back. I understood now why Marcus had been out on that highway at 3 in the morning. He wasn't running an errand. He was running from this house, and I should have done the same. The silence pressed in around me like a weight, but I didn't move. I couldn't. My legs felt like they didn't belong to me anymore, numb, heavy, useless. My heart hammered against my ribs, and for the first time since arriving at Marcus's house, I realized just how reckless I'd been to come here alone. But curiosity is a hell of a drug, and fear turns curiosity into obsession. I forced myself to breathe, slow and steady, fighting the tremor in my limbs. The glow from the rug had faded entirely now, leaving behind only the dark, charred spiral. The air still carried the faintest trace of that sour, metallic odor, but the oppressive, otherworldly atmosphere had lifted at least for now. I should have left. Any sane person would have bolted out the front door, driven as far away from this cursed house as possible. But as I stood there, my mind kept circling back to Marcus and what had really happened to him. His car crash didn't make sense, not the timing, not the location, and definitely not the look on his face when they found him. The paramedics told me his expression was wrong. Eyes wide, mouth frozen mid-scream, his body contorted as if bracing against some unseen impact, but the damage to the car didn't line up with that level of terror. What if whatever was here had been with him on that empty stretch of highway? The thought rooted itself in my mind, stubborn and heavy, impossible to shake. I couldn't leave. Not yet. I stepped away from the window and cautiously approached the center of the spiral, my shoes crunching lightly over the brittle edges of the burned fabric. The floor beneath felt colder than the rest of the room. The wood warped ever so slightly, as if the heat or whatever force had caused the markings had altered the structure itself. At the very center, I noticed something new, a small object, half buried beneath the singed threads. It hadn't been there earlier. My pulse quickened as I crouched down, carefully brushing the fibers aside. It was a key, old-fashioned, iron, heavy in my hand. The kind of key that belonged to something ancient. A trunk, maybe, or a door that shouldn't be opened. I turned it over, noticing faint etchings along the shaft symbols I didn't recognize. They weren't letters, at least not any language I understood. More like runes. Primitive, angular shapes carved with precision. The temperature in the room dropped again, not as violently as before, but enough to raise the hairs on my arms. I shoved the key into my jacket pocket and stood up, every instinct screaming at me to get out of that room. The hallway beyond Marcus's door was empty, but the house no longer felt abandoned. I could feel eyes on me. Not literal, physical eyes, but the awareness. The same presence I'd felt upstairs, watching, waiting. I made my way downstairs, each creaking floorboard echoing through the unnaturally quiet house. The front door remained locked, the windows intact. But the sense of isolation was overwhelming, as if the property itself had been cut off from the outside world. I hesitated by the base of the stairs, debating whether to leave entirely or keep searching. That key, it had to belong to something here. Then I remembered the basement. Marcus always hated that part of the house. Said it gave him the creeps, even before the strange dream started. He told me once, half jokingly, that the old house had secrets buried in its bones. At the time, I laughed it off. Now, I wasn't so sure. The basement door sat partially ajar in the hallway near the kitchen. The faint smell of earth and mildew wafted from the darkness beyond. I retrieved my phone, turning on the flashlight. The screen flickered for a moment, then stabilized. The battery percentage showed 17%, though I'd charged it fully before coming here. Typical. I descended the narrow wooden steps, each groan of the old staircase sounding unnaturally loud. The basement was unfinished concrete floor, exposed beams, old shelves stacked with forgotten boxes. Dust particles drifted in the thin beam of my flashlight, swirling lazily like ash. And there at the far wall I saw it, an old chest, heavy, wooden, bound with tarnished iron bands, its surface cracked with age. A keyhole sat dead center, the shape matching the antique key now burning a hole in my pocket. I hesitated. Some primal part of me screamed not to open it, that whatever was inside wasn't meant for curious hands or uninvited guests. But another part, the same part that had brought me here in the first place, overrode the fear. My hand shook as I pulled the key from my pocket and slid it into the lock. It turned with surprising ease. The lid creaked open, revealing nothing, or so I thought at first. A small, faded journal lay inside. The cover was cracked leather, the edges frayed with age. I lifted it carefully, flipping to the first page. The handwriting was unmistakably Marcus's, but the date scrawled at the top stopped me cold. October 18th, 1974. Over 40 years ago. I scanned the entry, my pulse racing with each line. It's back. I thought moving would stop it, but I was wrong. The circles appeared again last night. The dreams are worse. I see in the shadows, watching. It's waiting for the next one, just like it waited for me. I turned the page. Another entry. And another. Dozens of pages, all dated decades in the past, all in Marcus's handwriting. Impossible. Unless. A low creak echoed from behind me, followed by the soft whisper of fabric brushing the wall. The same sound I'd heard upstairs. I wasn't alone down here. And suddenly, the oppressive atmosphere returned heavier, colder than ever. The basement lights flickered, my phone screen glitched, displaying fragments of text that didn't belong more runes, like the ones carved into the key. The journal trembled in my hands, and the faintest whisper tickled my ear. It's your turn now. The whisper coiled around me like smoke, lingering long after the words faded. My grip tightened on the journal as I spun toward the sound, my flashlight beam cutting through the dusty air. Nothing, just rows of old shelves and boxes, silent and still. But I wasn't fooled anymore. It was here. It had always been here. The basement seemed to stretch unnaturally, the corners darker than they should be, the shadows thicker, heavier, like the walls themselves were leaning in. My pulse thundered in my ears as I shoved the journal into my jacket and back toward the stairs. That's when I saw it. On the far wall, behind where the chest had sat, a door. Narrow, barely visible in the low light. Its surface was warped, the wood darkened as if scorched. At its center, a small iron plate, engraved with the same spiral pattern, burned into the rug upstairs. The key burned against my leg through the fabric of my pocket, though I'd already used it. Or had I? A low hum began to fill the air, vibrating in my chest, rattling loose objects on shelves. The walls shuddered, the floor beneath my feet trembling ever so slightly, as if the house itself was reacting to my discovery. I should have run. But the door, there was something behind it. Something that explained the journal, the markings, the presence, and maybe, just maybe, what really happened to Marcus. My feet moved on their own. The door had no handle, only the engraved spiral. I pressed my palm against it, half expecting it to be locked or sealed. Instead, the surface was warm, almost alive. It pulsed beneath my hand, then clicked softly and opened. Behind the door was darkness so complete, so absolute. It devoured the weak beam of my flashlight. The smell hit me immediately, a suffocating mix of earth, rot, and something metallic familiar now. The same stench that had filled Marcus's bedroom. I hesitated at the threshold, the journal heavy in my pocket, the memory of that whisper still curling around my mind. It's your turn now. Taking a breath, I wasn't sure I'd be able to draw again. I stepped inside. The floor sloped downward, narrow steps carved into rough stone. The walls were damp, slick with moisture, and marked with more of those strange symbols. The same angular runes from the key, the journal, even my phone screen earlier. They seemed to writhe slightly in the flashlight beam, as if reacting to my presence. The staircase spiraled downward, another spiral, mirroring the pattern upstairs. After what felt like an eternity of descending, I reached the bottom. The space opened into a small, circular chamber. The walls curved inward, tight and oppressive, the ceiling low enough I had to duck. In the center stood an altar. Crude, stone, stained dark with something I didn't want to identify. Carved into its surface was the spiral once again. Only this time, it was incomplete. The line stopped abruptly near the center, unfinished, waiting to be completed. I wasn't alone down here either. Across the room, standing unnaturally still in the shadows, was Marcus. At least, it looked like him. His face was pale, gaunt, his eyes sunken deep into their sockets. Yet his expression was oddly calm. His mouth curled into a weak smile as I froze in place, my breath catching in my throat. "Hey," he said softly, voice brittle with exhaustion, but unmistakably his. "You finally found it." I couldn't speak, couldn't move. My mind rebelled against the scene. Marcus was dead. His body identified, his funeral held. This couldn't be real. He must have seen the doubt on my face. "I never left," Marcus continued, his voice low, heavy with an emotion I couldn't place. "Not really. The crash, it wasn't an accident. You know that now." I shook my head, words catching in my throat. His eyes flicked to the altar. It chooses someone. Every time. The house, the spiral, the thing behind all this. It waits, watches. It can't cross over on its own. It needs a door. A door. The journal. The markings. The key. "It used me last time," Marcus whispered. "It'll use you now." The chamber pulsed with a low vibration. The spiral etched into the altar faintly, glowing. My flashlight flickered, the shadows shifting unnaturally along the walls. I stumbled back, but there was nowhere to go. The staircase behind me had disappeared. Only smooth, seamless stone remained. The room darkened further as the glow from the altar intensified, bathing the chamber in a sickly red hue. "You can fight it," Marcus said, his voice shaking now, as if fighting against some unseen force. His eyes darted behind me, widening in fear. "But you have to run. Now. Run where?" I snapped, panic finally breaking through the paralysis. Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but his face twisted in pain, his body contorting as if yanked backward by invisible hands. His eyes rolled back, jaw snapping shut as a low, guttural noise filled the space. The shadows behind me swelled, shifting like liquid smoke, coalescing into a towering figure. Impossibly tall, its limbs unnaturally long, its head bent at an angle that defied anatomy. Its edges flickered and bled into the walls, as if reality couldn't fully contain it. The spiral on the altar completed itself in an instant, lines of red light connecting, pulsing with malicious life. A doorway opened, not a literal one, but a tear. A rupture in the center of the room, through which bled darkness deeper than anything I'd ever seen. From within that void, I heard whispers, countless voices overlapping, echoing, promising things no human should understand. The entity shifted, stepping toward me. My body finally obeyed instinct. I ran, not up the stairs, not toward any physical exit, but toward the only fragile thread of hope I could find. The journal. I yanked it from my jacket, flipping through pages as the air thickened with that impossible metallic stench. Marcus's handwriting blurred in my vision, but one page, one line, burned itself into my mind. Break the circle or become part of it. The spiral wasn't just a symbol. It was a trap, a ritual, a loop. If I didn't break it, I'd end up like Marcus. Or worse. The entity closed the distance, its faceless head tilting as it reached out. The edges of its form crackled with static, the chamber groaning under its impossible presence. I didn't hesitate. With trembling hands, I tore the journal apart, ripping pages, shredding symbols, breaking the pattern. The spiral on the altar fractured, light sputtering, the rupture in reality convulsing violently. The creature shrieked, not a sound, but a vibration that rattled my teeth and bones, before its form wavered, glitching, collapsing inward. The world inverted. Darkness swallowed everything. I woke in Marcus's bedroom, gasping, drenched in cold sweat. The burned rug remained, the spiral still visible, but broken now, its pattern incomplete. My phone buzzed weakly beside me. 9:24 p.m. Only a minute had passed, but I knew better. The house felt emptier, not normal, but no longer watched. I left that night. Left the journal, the house, the key. I never looked back, but sometimes in the corner of my eye, I see the spiral again. And I know the circle isn't truly broken. It's just waiting. If you made it this far, you're braver than most. Thanks for sticking with me through another unsettling story. Whether you're listening to drift off to sleep or just because you enjoy the eerie unknown, I appreciate you being here. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And hey, if you've ever experienced something strange yourself, let me know in the comments. I read them all, and you never know, your story might just end up in a future video. Until then, sleep well if you can.